Kandi Burruss found herself in tears when her daughter Riley finally confronted Todd Tucker about the family drama that had been quietly destroying their home. Fans who had always admired Kandi's strength and success were stunned to learn how fragile things had become behind closed doors. What looked like a thriving, blended family on television was far from the truth. The breaking point came when Riley, who had carried years of silence, decided to let her feelings out, and the emotional fallout left Kandi more vulnerable than ever before. For years, Riley refused to see Todd as more than just her mother's husband. That emotional wall, built on loyalty to her biological father, grew higher as time went on. Kandi tried to play peacemaker, balancing her role as a wife and a mother, but the weight of constant conflict was slowly crushing her. The tipping point came when Riley's confrontation with Todd exposed the raw pain everyone had been trying to hide. Todd, who had stayed quiet for so long, was finally forced into the spotlight, while Kandi, caught between her husband and her daughter, crumbled under the pressure. This wasn't just another family disagreement, it was a moment that revealed the hidden cost of Kandi's picture-perfect life. Her tears symbolized something deeper, the breaking down of an image she had worked so hard to protect. And while Riley's confrontation shook the family to its core, it also opened the door to long-suppressed truths that could either heal the Burruss-Tucker household or tear it apart forever. On the outside, Kandi Burruss looked unstoppable. A Grammy-winning songwriter, a reality TV star, and a successful entrepreneur, her image was polished to perfection. But what fans didn't see was how her personal life was unraveling at home, quietly threatening the very stability she worked so hard to project. Viewers of The Real Housewives of Atlanta and other shows often saw Kandi and Todd laughing together, celebrating milestones, and creating the illusion of a seamless, blended family. It seemed like the kind of love story people envied. Two driven individuals raising children, running businesses, and thriving as partners. But when the cameras turned off, a very different story was playing out. Behind closed doors, the tension between Riley and Todd created an undercurrent of stress that only grew stronger with time. Kandi, who had spent her career proving her resilience, found herself trapped in a cycle of conflict she couldn't control. The weight of maintaining her public image, while privately suffering, began to chip away at her health, leaving her drained and vulnerable. Kandi's situation revealed the harsh truth about fame. No matter how glamorous a life looks on television, the reality at home can be very different. Her struggle proved that success doesn't shield anyone from pain. And for Kandi, the price of keeping up appearances was her own emotional well-being, a cost that no amount of fame or money could ever balance. At the heart of Kandi's tears was one of the most painful family struggles any mother could face, the divide between her daughter Riley and her husband Todd. This wasn't a simple disagreement, it was a clash that had been simmering for years. From the beginning, Riley never accepted Todd as a father figure. To her, he was her mother's partner, but not her dad. That boundary, fueled by her loyalty to her biological father, only grew more rigid over time. Todd, on the other hand, walked on eggshells, unsure of how to bridge the gap without pushing Riley further away. For Kandi, the conflict was heartbreaking. Every attempt she made to smooth things over only deepened her stress. She wanted Riley to respect Todd, but she also understood her daughter's loyalty. Caught in the middle, Kandi felt like she was losing both of them. And when Riley finally confronted Todd, all of those years of unspoken tension came rushing to the surface in a way that no one could ignore. The conflict between Riley and Todd highlighted the struggles of blended families everywhere. Love and loyalty doesn't always align, and for children, accepting a step-parent can feel like betraying their own parent. Kandi's heartbreak showed just how damaging these divides can be, not just for the child and step-parent, but for the entire family dynamic. As if Riley and Todd's strained relationship weren't enough, another fracture in the family made Kandi's struggles even more complicated. The growing distance between Riley and Kayla Tucker, what should have been a chance for two young women to find comfort in each other, became yet another source of tension. Blended families often hope that step-siblings will bond and become allies, but Riley and Kayla never clicked. Instead of growing closer, the two drifted further apart with time. Their personalities clash, their interests never line up, and small disagreements often spiral into silence or coldness. For Kandi, this was devastating. She had quietly hoped that Riley and Kayla would lean on each other, becoming sisters in spirit, if not by blood. Instead, she found herself watching two young women build walls instead of bridges. This wasn't just about arguments at the dinner table, it was about an atmosphere in the home that grew heavier with every unspoken word. The more distance Riley and Kayla put between themselves, the more isolated Kandi felt in her own family. The failure of Riley and Kayla to bond was more than just sibling rivalry. It symbolized the collapse of Kandi's dream of unity. It showed how fragile blended families can be. where expectations don't always match reality. For Kandi, it was another reminder that love alone couldn't fix the divides in her household. And for the audience, it raised a painful question. What happens when even the next generation can't find common ground? Todd stayed in the background for years, watching the conflict unfold. But as Kandi's tears became harder to ignore, he realized silence was no longer an option. His decision to finally confront Riley would mark a turning point for the entire family. Todd had been patient, almost to a fault. He avoided pushing Riley, hoping time would heal the gap. But the toll on Kandi became undeniable. Her spark was fading, her health was suffering, and her emotional strength was collapsing under the pressure. Todd couldn't stand by anymore. In a moment of rare vulnerability, he approached Riley, not as an authority figure, but as a man desperate to protect his wife and preserve his family. Instead of demanding respect, Todd admitted that he felt powerless in the face of her rejection. He didn't want to replace her father. He didn't want to be her enemy. He just wanted her to see him as a friend, someone who cared for her and wanted peace in their home. This honesty shifted the tone. For the first time, Riley was confronted not with rules or expectations, but with Todd's raw humanity. Todd's words revealed the strength it takes to lead with humility instead of authority. In families, especially blended ones, respect can't be forced, it has to be built. His confrontation wasn't about winning an argument, but about saving the woman he loved and opening the door to understanding. Whether Riley would accept that vulnerability was uncertain, but Todd's bravery changed the conversation forever. When Todd finally spoke, everyone expected some kind of breakthrough. Instead, what followed was silence, and that silence hit harder than any argument Riley could have made. Riley's refusal to respond left the family in limbo. Her quietness wasn't about not caring, it was about protecting her loyalty to her biological father. But her silence cut deep. For Kandi, that moment was devastating. She had hoped that Todd's honesty would soften her daughter's heart, yet all it did was create an even heavier tension. Days turned into weeks, and the house felt colder than ever. Dinners were filled with empty stares, and Kandi's once bubbly energy disappeared. Todd began to notice how badly it had affected her. Long nights spent awake, skipping meals, and isolating herself in her studio just to escape the stress. Kandi, the woman who had always carried everyone else, was breaking in front of them. Riley's silence showed that words aren't always necessary to make an impact. Sometimes, withholding a response says more than speaking out. For Kandi, it was a harsh reality that her efforts weren't working, and the pressure of holding the family together was destroying her from the inside. With her strength slipping away, Kandi finally did something she had avoided for years. She broke down and pleaded directly with Riley. This wasn't the confident Kandi fans knew. Her voice shook as she told Riley she couldn't keep living like this. She didn't ask her daughter to love Todd as a father, but she begged her not to close her heart completely. It wasn't about authority or discipline anymore. It was about survival. Riley, shocked by the rawness of her mother's words, stayed guarded, but it was the first time she saw Kandi so fragile. For Kandi, it was the most vulnerable moment of her life, admitting that her health and happiness were slipping away because of the division in her family. Kandi's plea showed her the power of honesty in its purest form. When a mother admits she's at her breaking point, it forces everyone to rethink their role in the family. Whether Riley would respond remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Kandi could no longer carry the weight alone. Just when the family thought the silence couldn't get any heavier, Todd Tucker finally spoke up, and her words added an entirely new layer of pain. Kayla had often stayed in the background, watching the tension unfold between Riley and Todd, but deep down, she carried her own hurt. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Kayla admitted that she often felt like a guest in her own home. She said it seemed like Riley resented her presence, and instead of feeling like part of the family, she felt like an outsider forced into the house that never truly welcomed her. For Kandi, hearing this was almost unbearable. She wanted so badly for both girls to feel like daughters, but now she was confronted with the reality that neither Riley nor Kayla felt fully accepted. That confession shattered the illusion of progress and exposed how broken the household truly was. Kandi, overwhelmed with guilt, broke down completely in front of both Riley and Kayla, confessing she could no longer pretend everything was fine. Kayla's honesty showed that family struggles don't just affect the obvious relationships, they ripple across every bond. Her pain proved that ignoring the problem only deepens the divide. For Kandi, it was a sobering reminder that love alone wasn't enough. The family needed truth and vulnerability from everyone, not just her. if they were ever going to heal. After years of silence and deflection, Riley finally opened up, and what she revealed left everyone stunned. Riley admitted she never hated Todd, but she hated the situation. Watching her mother build a new life while she still clung to memories of her father created a wound she couldn't close. She confessed that every time she saw Todd and Kayla together, she felt like she was intruding in someone else's family. That resentment wasn't just about rejecting a stepfather, it's about not knowing where she belonged at all. Todd, instead of getting defensive, responded with honesty of his own. He revealed that as a child, he too had felt stuck between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. For the first time, Riley saw Todd not as her mother's husband, but as someone carrying scars similar to her own. This moment didn't fix everything, but it cracked the walls she had built so carefully. Riley's confession reminded everyone that beneath anger often lies hurt. Her truth revealed that loneliness she had hidden behind her silence, and Todd's vulnerability created the first fragile bridge between them. It wasn't resolution, but it was the beginning of understanding, a step Kandi had prayed for but never thought she'd see. Just when it seemed like the conversation might collapse again, Todd delivered a confession that caught both Riley and Kandi completely off guard. Looking directly at Riley, Todd admitted that she was never an outsider in his eyes. He told her that the reason he pushed harder with her than with anyone else wasn't rejection. It was because he saw her as the missing piece of their family. His words came without anger or defense, just raw honesty. Riley, who had spent years believing she was unwanted, broke down for the first time in front of him. Tears fell as she admitted she had been carrying a loneliness that no one noticed. She wasn't ready to call Todd dad, and she didn't suddenly become best friends with Kayla, but something shifted. For the first time, Riley allowed herself to listen instead of being shut down. Todd, in turn, promised to give her time and space, proving that his patience came with care, not obligation. Todd's confession showed that love isn't about titles, it's about persistence and honesty. By opening up about his own vulnerabilities, he broke through the final layer of Riley's defenses. The moment didn't fix the years of conflict, but it planted a seed of healing. And for Kandi, watching her daughter and husband finally meet in truth gave her a spark of hope she thought she had lost forever. The night ended not with perfect harmony, but with something even more powerful. The first glimpse of a family willing to fight for understanding. Kandi, though still weak and emotionally drained, felt relief wash over her as she saw the walls begin to crack. Riley hadn't been fully embraced by Todd. Kayla still carried wounds of her own, and the family dynamic was far from healed. But there was progress. For years, silence and resentment had defeated the Burruss-Tucker household. Now, truth and honesty were starting to take their place. Fans who had once envied Kandi's picture-perfect image were now seeing the reality. Behind the fame, behind the cameras, was a woman struggling to hold her family together just like anyone else. Her tears weren't a sign of weakness, they were proof of her humanity. This story wasn't about a flawless ending, it was about the first step toward healing, and the courage it takes to face the people with we love with honesty instead of pride. The Burruss-Tucker family still had battles ahead, but they also had unlocked something new: hope. And sometimes, hope is enough to change the course of everything. But the question remains, will Riley fully let Todd into her life? Or was this just a brief calm before the storm? Soon, we'll uncover whether Riley truly lets Todd into her life, or if this fragile piece shatters once again.